All right. Well, here we are at the home of Chuck and Kathy Hayes at 45609. And they have two homes up here, 45526 Poso Park Drive, Posey, California. So, Chuck and Kathy, you're one of the few people up here that live here full time. How did that come to be?
Well, my mom bought this cabin in 1943, and as a little kid up here, I had to come up in the summers and spend all summers with her, so I got kind of used to these mountains. In later life, when I was out chasing women, I was dating Kathy, and let's see, she found out that I had this cabin up here, so she decided she was the one that I was going to marry, and I did. So she's always liked the mountains, and when we retired, we started coming up here and spending more and more time. And finally I said, we might just as well live up here. And she says, oh, goody. And we stayed down in the old cabin and about froze to death one winter. So after that, we made arrangements to bring this present home up here that's well insulated, well heated, and suitable for an old man like me to live in.
Well, very good.
You want to add anything, Kathy?
Well, let me ask Kathy. You know, Kathy, it sounds to me like you married Chuck just because he owned a cabin up here in Poso Park.
You have to learn that Chuck tells stories, and he also tells some untruths. It sounds better, makes a better story.
All right. Well, listen, back to your mother. You mentioned your mother. What was her name?
Her name was Ruth Christopher Hayes, which is my last name. And then she married a guy named Woodman, and then she married a guy named Porter, and she outlasted all of them. She bought this cabin, as stated, in 1943, and it was a real dump. It was bare boards cabin, and I remember that I could swing on the rafters because they were exposed inside the cabin. And that was a lot of fun. Had an old wood stove, and I got to cut wood for it. I hate cutting wood ever since. But I'd spend all summer up here, summer after summer after summer, until I was about 16 years old. Then I could go to work in the crops in Wasco, and my mom let me stay down there by myself, and she'd come up here. But she'd come down almost every week to check on me, make sure I was a good boy, which I was. She always said I was a very easy child to raise.
And perfect in every way.
Mothers tend to think that.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And
well, what would you do up here for all those summers? What were some of your adventures?
Well, my mom bought me a horse, Baldy, one of the worst horses in the world. And he's a nasty horse. Every time you try to get on him, he'd turn around and try to bite you. Or if you tried to mount from the head side, he'd turn around and try to bite you in the rear or kick you in the tail end. But I had this horse, and he entertained me a lot, made me madder than all get out.
You're still mad.
Still mad about that horse after all those years. But I got even with him. We sold him to the glue factory. Well, that's what my mother said when we got rid of him. But I'd use that horse to go up into the mountains, and I'd cut fallen oak limbs and things, and I'd tie them up in a bundle, and I'd make the horse drag them down to the cabin, and then I'd saw them up for the wood stove. That's why I have my dislike for cutting wood, for wood-burning stoves. More, you know, I don't understand people that want to do that, like the Lundquist here. He loves cutting wood. But that's what I did. And then when I was about probably 9 or 10, my mom bought me a .22 rifle, and I'd walk these roads shooting squirrels. And I just spent my time up here. I had a lot of little tools and things that I'd make things with.
The nails, tell the nails.
Oh yeah, and the nails. My mom would buy me brand new nails to drive into boards. And there was an older gentleman, looked old to me anyway, at a young age, named Dad Simons. And Dad Simons just could not understand why my mother would buy me brand new nails just to waste driving into an old log or a board. And she told him, she says, when he's out there hammering, I know where he is. And so I remember we had the Coleman lanterns, no electricity. We had to pump those things up, and we had an outhouse, and we saved the ashes from the wood stove to dump down the outhouse to keep the odors down, and those were always my chores. So anyway, I like modern living rather than old time stuff.
Well, Kathy, when did you arrive up here to Poso Park, and what did you think of it?
Well, we married in 1967, and we had come up to the cabin before we got married, and I just fell in love with the place. We call it the Poso Park Peace. There's nothing nicer than to sit by the creek and read a book. When it gets really hot, I can take my lawn chair and put it in the creek and sit with my feet in the water to keep cool and read more books. But I fell in love with just the idea of having a place, and my secret desire was to live up here full time. And my favorite activity is to stand on my porch on Sunday afternoon and wave goodbye to all the weekenders that can't stay.
Including us. Well, I understand that you have a hobby that you've almost turned into a vocation, and that happens to be making quilts.
Yes.
And you even teach people. Tell us about that.
Well, Sharon McLaughlin, who lives up here full time, asked me if she could come and join me one day a week to sew together. So I said, well, sure, that sounds like fun. And then a little while later she says, well, you know, I have some friends from our little church up here, and they would just love to come and sew. Could I bring them? I said, oh, sure, that would be fine. And then the next time I talked to her, she said, well, what are you going to teach us? And so that kind of started our quilting group. And I have up to 15 ladies that come in every Wednesday. And we, right now, we have a Bible study for a part of the morning, and then we do our quilting. And I've taught many, many, many women up here how to sew and then how to quilt. Chuck repairs sewing machines, so we kind of have this thing in our life that he likes to tinker on the machines, and then they, keep up for the ladies, and I teach them to quilt, and it's just something that gives me great pleasure. I think the most pleasurable thing is giving the quilts away. I give away a lot of quilts. I give away to different organizations for raffles. We have a prayer quilt ministry through our church that the ladies and I make the quilts, and we just I need quilting right now. I'm a little bit homebound, and it gives me something to look forward to every day.
Well, they're beautiful quilts, and you've been very generous with them. And as Chuck has been with all of his work that he does. Now, Chuck, have there been any special adventures that you've had up here, or others that have? Any stories that you'd like to tell about Poso Park?
Oh, Poso Park. It's really all an adventure in itself. As a young kid, I had my horse, and I'd ride him around the mountains, and he was pretty ornery. He'd plug along real well riding, then he'd see a low-hanging branch, and he'd go for it, trying to knock me off the saddle.
What about people up here?
Oh, people are characters up here. Let's see, they're the Lundquists up here. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to garden like he's down in the big city, and you know what? It's turning out pretty well. I don't know what other projects I've made particularly. The most recent one, I should be able to remember that, and that was benches, wooden tops, heavy duty, of course, for their greenhouse. And they got to paint them, and he said, "Boy, that was a chore." I know painting is a chore, so I let them do that.
Well, listen, I want to segue into another thing now that you're talking about what you build. I understand you were a teacher, and you taught wood shop and metalworking, I believe.
I did.
Why don't you show us a little bit about what you did and where you did it?
All right, I taught high school in Victorville, California for 37 years. And towards the last part of the shop program, state was in all their wisdom phasing them out, and they started really starving me for a budget. And I was scrounging around for something to make that was cheap. And I had the boys, we made this little steam engine right here. I could build that for 43 cents. And the rest of all the parts and pieces that I scrounged. We had a foundry where we would cast this rough casting, you see here, and they would machine it into a steam engine. We ran this engines on air pressure, and if the engine would run on about 3 pounds or less, they would get an A minus. If they wanted an A, they had to do what I called Avon it, make it look real pretty, and some of them could do a real good job at that. But this little project right here was kind of a lifesaver. And Jane wants me to show you my sort of lesson plans and teaching manual that went with this. And it was right here. It was a booklet full of step by step drawings.
Well, here, Chuck, lay this thing right over your this steam engine right over your drawing there. Let's see.
Oh, that first drawing?
Right. So
Yeah.
so everybody can see how you did it.
How that
I mean, I
did it.
think you're a master teacher.
There's the first
There it
drawing,
is.
the rough castings, and there are the rough castings.
Oh, that's
right there.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
And then they would go through this booklet, read the instructions, do the work. Of course, they had demonstrations and everything.
Well, I think this thing ought to be put in the Kern County Historical Society so you don't lose all these. I mean, that's really quite a lesson plan.
Yeah, it worked out real well for me. I should give it to some shop teacher in Bakersfield if they have any shops left anymore.
Well, let's turn over here and take a look at one of Kathy's quilts. And Chuck, if you'll stand up, I'll pan over and we'll take a look at another one here. Here we go. Aren't those beautiful?
They are.
Now, one last thing I'd like to ask you both. What about your family? I know that you had children, and just briefly tell us a little bit about who they are and where they are.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, you do that.
Okay.
You raised them. I didn't.
We have 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy. The 2 oldest children, a boy and a girl, live in St. Louis. They're both married. Sherry, our oldest, has given us 2 beautiful grandchildren, and they in turn have given us 3 beautiful great-grandchildren. Our son and his wife, Lynn, have not had children yet. They've only been married for about 5 years. We're still hoping. We have 2 girls in Apple Valley. Colleen is the youngest, and she has gifted us with our beautiful little granddaughter, Liza. They are able to come and see us. Colleen is a nurse, and her husband, Grover, is a school teacher. So they have time off to come up and enjoy Poso Park. We enjoyed our granddaughter this last winter for her first sleepover at Grandma's, Kathy, and Grandpa Chuck's house, all by herself. And we met Colleen in Los Angeles at a doctor's appointment, and we took Liza home from there. And she lasted the first night fine, and the second night, about 11 o'clock, I heard this little, "Grandma, I think I'm homesick." And but she's such a delight. We convinced her that she could call her mom and dad in the morning, and she lasted all right. And now we ask her if she'd like to spend overnight by herself at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and she said maybe just one night.
All right. Well, anything that you'd like to say to for the good of the order before we end this oral history?
Well, you might ask what I do all the time up here.
Yeah, what do you do, Chuck?
Well, I do a lot, actually. Mostly I just piddle around. I have a shop out there in the back with a welder and some metalworking tools. And I make flowers, and here's one here. Gene wanted me to show you this thing.
Oh, yes.
And this flower has a name. It's called Ferris Flower of Posy. And I make these up, and I give them to people a lot of times in the area that have some sort of stress in their life, just to make them feel good. But I've probably given away about, 25 or 30 of these things. And some of them are sold at the Posy, what's it called?
Posey Area
Fire Auxiliary fundraiser that helps support the
Volunteer
fire department that's up here. And we sell those there. Let's see, what else do I do? Oh, I repair sewing machines. And I also make a lot of pieces and parts for projects up here that the stand cliffs come up, and they kind of builders up here in the area, and they run into problems, and I help them out with those. And then I do artwork right here. Gene asked me to show you this, brag a little bit. But, this is some of the artwork that I do right here. Right here's another one.
Oh, yes.
And then I do books. Well, there's one, you see. I'm just trying to learn how to draw right there.
Uh-huh. Very
And
good.
I do a lot of these things. When we go to church up here at Little Posey Church, I draw on these during the sermon, and it looks like I take sermon notes, but really I just draw pictures, and I get a lot of them like that. We go down to Husano's, which is down in Glenville, 16 miles away, and I draw these on napkins and leave them there, and the wait crew down there a lot of times take them and tell me they like them. And some of them even get pinned up on the bar or behind the bar.
Well, very good,
So
very good.
I'm becoming quite famous.
You're going to be a Van Gogh.
Well, no, this is just kind of a hobby that I do, and I sum it all up as junk art, but some people think it's kind of nice. So I'll brag. Some of it is.
Well, listen, beloved citizens of Poso Park, and we really appreciate being able to do this interview with both of you, and we'll give you a DVD of this to give to your children.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.